Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So I'm starting a new series on MERN stack or full stack development where we will build different projects and learn about technologies like React, Node.js, TypeScript, API integration, Tailwind CSS, Firebase, and many more. And in this episode, we will build our first MERN stack project from scratch, and we will start by building backend APIs using Node.js and TypeScript. Understand about Node.1 configuration, TS-NODE, MongoDB connection with Mongoose, and Express server. In the next episode, we are going to build the front-end part of this application. If this sounds interesting, then stick around. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. So let's get started. ZEGOCLOUD is a global communication service provider which provides developer-friendly and powerful SDK and APIs to build many communication features on the app such as video call, chat, video conference, live streaming, and many more. Now, the pre-built UI kits and components help in building and shipping applications to the market in the shortest possible time. Instead of building everything from the scratch, ZEGOCLOUDs have more than 20 plus UI kits and 50 plus components with easy customization and ready to use. And these UI kits are suited for different use cases like testing tools, when you build an MVP for funding, or in-app plugins to our existing apps. And it is very less time consuming, economical, and we really need to focus on the core businesses. The UI kits covers the needs of various industries and offers features like one-to-one calls, group calls, video conferencing, live streaming, in-app chat, and many more. And ZEGOCLOUD provides an easy guide for developers to integrate the SDK and build apps faster. You can also get the fully customized SDK for your projects to integrate features like video call, audio call, live streaming, and in-app chat. You can start building your projects by simply signing up to ZEGOCLOUD and you will get 10,000 minutes for free. So I'm going to click on start building, and this is going to take me to the login page where you will just create your account. I already have an account, so I will just do a login. Now, once you log in, you will be redirected to this console and where you will see your dashboard. You can simply click on create a project. Then you can select any of the use case that you want to build. I will select voice and video call. We can click on next. Then you need to provide your project name, and then you can choose either the UI kits or you can start with the custom SDK and use the configuration in your project. You will find all the links related to the ZEGOCLOUD in the description of the video so that you can check it out later on. Now let's get back to our project. Alright guys, so I have opened my Visual Studio Code, and here we will see that we have a blank folder which is the URL shortener. So what we will do is first let's create two directories. So I'm going to have the directory for the client app where we will put our React code. So we will have our front end, and then we are going to create another directory which will be our backend. So I'm going to have the server app. So now we have these two folders where we are going to have our front end and the backend part. Now first we are going to build the backend system, and then we are going to work on the front end part. So for the backend, what we will do is we are going to use the Nodejs along with the MongoDB, and we will also have the TypeScript. So we are going to build this project into Express TypeScript. So what I will do is let's check the node version. So I'm going to have the node-v, and I have the version 20. I will also check the npm version. So we have this npm version as 10.2.3. Now you need to install the Node.js into your machine. That is a prerequisite. But if you don't know how to install it, what you can do is you can just go to the official doc of the Node.js, and then you can just download this recommended for most users. Alright, you just need to click on it and you will get an installer file which you just want to open it, and then you will do next, and you install Node.js into your machine. Once the Node.js is installed into your machine, you can do node-v and check the version, and you can also do npm-v to check the version of your npm. So we have this. Now I will just clear it. Now to build our backend app, let's go to the backend directory. So I'm going to have the cd server app, and here we need to create a package.json file. So what I will do is I'm going to do npm init. All right, and this is going to ask us the package name. So I'm going to give the name as url-shortener-api. I'm going to hit enter. Next, we will keep the version as it is. Then for the description, I will give this project contains URL shortener APIs. All right, then I'm going to hit enter. For the main point, I'm going to give the server.js. All right, test command, I'm not going to give anything, no git repository, no keywords. Author, I'm going to put my name, you can put your name. License, I'm going to hit enter, and then we're going to type yes, and we have our package.json file. All right, so this is how our package.json file looks like. Now the next thing what we need to do is we need to install the dependencies for our project which we'll need. So what I will do is I will just clear it, and then for the dependency I will have the npm install express. Then we will also use the .env package. Then we will have the Mongoose, and we are going to use the nano id. So for the nano id, I'm going to use the version as 3. So make sure you have the proper version, otherwise it will not work. So I'm using the version as 3, and then we'll also have the cores. All right, I'm going to hit enter, and this is going to install all the dependencies into our project. So it's going to take some time, and all the dependencies are now installed. Let's go to the package.json and let's check. So we have the cores, .env, express, mongoose, and nano id. Now I need to create the server.js. So what I will do is I'm going to go to the server, and I'm going to create the file as server.js. all right, now let's start importing. So I'm going to have the constant express, and this will be equals to the require express. All right, and we see that we can just change it to the ES module. So I'm going to click on fix and convert to ES module. So this is going to convert it to the ES module. Next, I'm going to import the .env, and that will be coming from the .env. Then I will also import the cores, and that will be coming from the cores. Now I'm going to use the .env.config so that I can fetch the values from my .env file. Now I'm going to create a simple app from the express. So let's have the express app. All right, and then what I will do is we will also need to create a .env file, but for now what I will do is I'm going to have a constant. I will have the port, which will be equals to the, I'm going to take it from the process.env.port, or I can also give the port as 5001. All right, so we have the express app. Now let's create a simple get API. So what I will do is I'm going to have the app.get, and I'm going to have the slash, and then I'm going to have the request response. All right, and I'm simply going to saying res.send, and I'm going to send hello world. All right, so we have the simple get endpoint, and now the last thing what we'll do is we are going to listen to the app. So app.listen, and we are going to pass the port, and I'm going to have the arrow function here, and then I'm going to simply do a console.log. I'm going to use backtick, and I will have server started successfully on port, and then let's give the port number. So I'm going to have the port number here. So this is a very simple basic express app we have created, and now let's try and run it. So what I will do is let's go to the package.json file, and in the package.json file let's do a start script. So I'm going to have the start, and then I will simply have the node server.js. all right, I will save it, and now let's give a try. So I'm going to clear the terminal first, and then I will have the npm start. I get an error because I miss a comma here. Let's give a try again. So I'm going to start. All right, so we get an error which is that cannot use import statement outside a module. So to fix that, for now what we can do is we can go to the package.json, and in the package.json we can just have the type as module. All right, I will save it, and let's give a try. So I'm going to clear the console, and I'm going to give a try now, and we see that the server started successfully on port 5001. We can also check our endpoint, which is the slash. So I'm going to use the Thunder client. I'm going to click on new request. Let's go to the localhost. So I'm going to have the localhost colon 5001, and I'm going to send the request, and we see that we have the hello world. All right, so now our express server is working fine. We can also see the hello world. And if you don't know what this Thunder client is, it is just a simple extension which I am using. So I can show you if we go to my extensions, and then we see that this is the Thunder client which I am using. So I don't have to switch between the Postman and my VS Code. So you can also give a try and use the Thunder client. Now the next thing what we need to do is we are going to build this project in TypeScript instead of the JavaScript. So let's add TypeScript into our Node.js project. All right, so I'm going to close this. Let's clear the terminal, and the first we need to do is we need to install TypeScript into our project. So what I will do is I'm going to have the npm install TypeScript. I'm going to use -d because I want it as a dev dependency. All right, now this is going to install TypeScript into my project. Along with that, I will also need the Nodemon so that our file changes can be watched and just restart our server. So what I will do is I'm going to have the npm install nodemon-d. So I'm going to hit enter, and now this is going to install the Nodemon as well. All right, now we will also need a TypeScript configuration. So to get the TypeScript configuration, what we will do is we are just going to use the npx tsc, and I'm going to use hyphen hyphen in it, and this is going to generate a tsconfig file for us. Now we can go to the tsconfig file, and here what we will do is we are not going to change anything. We'll just change the output directory. So let's go and let's change the out directory, and to this out directory what I will do is I'm going to add dist here. So whenever I build my app, it is going to generate a dist folder, and we are going to have all our TypeScript files converted to a JavaScript files. Alright, so we have this TypeScript configuration also. I'm going to use the default configuration file and not going to change much. Alright, and then what we will do is we are also going to create a source folder and move our server.js into the source folder. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to create a source folder, and let's move this server.js into the source folder. I will save it. Alright, and we see that there is an error that no input files were found in the config file, and this is because we don't have any of the TypeScript file. So usually we need at least one TypeScript file into our project. So now the next task will be, let's convert the server.js into the server.ts. So I'm going to have this server.ts, and you will see that now we don't have any errors. Alright, I will also remove the type as module because now we have added the TypeScript file here and also the tsconfig, so we don't need to add anything like package.json. all right, because here we have already specified that we are going to use the module as common.js. Now the next thing what we need to do is, you will see that we get an errors here, and since we have already converted into a TypeScript file, we will have the type errors, and here you will see that could not find a declaration file for the module express. So now let's add the types here. Let me clear the console first. I'm going to have the npm install. I will have the types, and those types will be for the express. Alright, I will also have the types, and these types will be for the course. So for each of the package we need to add the types as well. Alright, I will have the types for Mongoose. So let me add for the Mongoose. Then I will have the types for Node. Alright, and we need to add this as a dev dependency. So I'm going to add -d, and I'm going to hit enter. And now if we go back, then we see that we don't have any errors. Now the next part is that we are using this as a TS file. Now if we want to run our application, so if I run npm start, then we are going to get the errors because module not found, and you will see that they cannot find the JS file. Alright, so what we need to do is let's have a script in our package.json. So I'm going to go to the package.json file, and I'm going to create a build script first. And for the build script, what we will do is we are going to have npx tsc. So this is the TypeScript compiler. Now if I go and use the npm build, then in that case it is going to, we need to use npm run build. All right, so this is going to create a dist folder. So now you see that we have a dist folder, and everything is converted into a JS file now. All right, now if we want to use it, then what I can do is we can go here, and here we need to take the file from the dist folder. So I'm going to have the dist slash server.js. Now I'm going to run the npm start, and this is now starting my server. So we have already converted our Node.js project into the TypeScript. So we are using TypeScript, and we also want to use the Nodemon. So whenever we make a change in the file, our server should reload automatically. All right. So what we will do is I will also add a npx tsc here, and then I'm going to add it like this. All right. So that whenever my server gets started, it will first build, and then it was going to serve the server.js file from the dist folder. Now the next I will add is the dev. So we are going to have a dev, and to the dev I'm going to add the Nodemon. All right, now if we go and run directly npm run dev, then we are going to get into the errors. All right, now let's fix this error. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a file which will be Nodemon JSON file, which will contain some config related to the Nodemon. So I'm going to go here. I will have the nodemon.json, and to this nodemon.json what I will do is I'm going to have a JSON here, and I will have the watch. We need to watch all the files into our source directory. So I'm going to have src here. because we are going to create all our files into the source. So that's why we are watching the source folder. The next we will need to have an ext extension for our files, and we are going to look for all the TypeScript file and all the .js files. And the last one we need to have is the exec, and for this what we will do is we need to serve our server.ts file directly from where it is. We don't need to go to the dist folder because we are not going to build our project every time. So for that what I will do is I'm going to have the src and I will have the server.ts. But to make this work we will also need to have one more package which is called the TS-NODE. Alright, so what we will do is I'm going to go here. So our Nodemon is crashing now, so I'm going to cancel. I will clear the console and I will also install the ts-node -d. Alright, and this is also a dev dependency. The package is installed now. If we go to the package.json, we will be able to see ts-node. Alright, now let's go here, and here what we will do is I'm going to add the ts-node and I'm going to save it. Now let's go and let's have npm run dev, and this should start our dev server. Alright, so we have this server and we can also try our API. So we will go here and we are going to send the request, and we see we have the hello world. Alright, so till now our project is set up completely using Node.js, Express, Mongoose and our TypeScript. Alright, so let's go back to our files, and the first thing we will do is we are going to connect our application to the database. So we need to have the MongoDB database. So let's go to the browser. Alright, I'm going to go here. I will have the MongoDB at last. So let's use the MongoDB at last. I'm going to log in. Alright, so I have logged into my account and I'm going to create a new project which will be the URL Shortener app. I'm going to click on next and I will be the project owner. I will create the project. Alright, then I'm going to click on create and let's do a project deployment. Alright, and here I'm going to select the free tier. So I will have the M0. I will use the Frankfurt EU, which is closest to me. Then we are going to have the cluster. Alright, and then I'm going to click on create. So this is a free account. So here you can give the username and the password, and then you can have your IP address whitelisted so that you can access your project. So once you create the username and then you whitelist your IP address, you will go to the database deployments where you can click on the connect, and you will go on drivers, and we are going to use Node.js, and then to add the connect we can use this connection string. So I'm going to copy this connection string and let's go to our Visual Studio Code. We need to create an .env file. So I'm going to go here and I will have the .env, and in this .env file I'm going to have a connection string. So I will have the connection string, and then I'm going to add the connection string which I have just received. Alright, so here you will see that we have this as a connection string where you just need to replace your password. Alright, so I have added the connection string in my env file, and now what we will do is let's try to connect to our MongoDB database. So to connect to the MongoDB database, I'm first going to create a folder. So I will go here and I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to name the folder as config. Alright, and inside the config I'm going to create a file which will be db connection. So I'm going to have the db, let's have dbconfig.ts. And then inside here what I will do is I will first import the Mongoose. So we are going to use Mongoose, and then I'm going to have a constant. I will create a function with a connect db. This is going to be an arrow function, and I'm going to use async here. Alright, then let's use the try and catch. So in the try what I will do is I'm going to have a constant as connect. I'm going to use await. Let's use mongoose dot connect, and in the mongoose.connect we need to pass our connection string. So let's have the connection string. So I'm going to use backtick. I'll have the dollar, and here I will use the process.env.connection string. So let's have the connection, and then I'm going to have the string. Alright, now if the connection is established, I will console log some information so that I can know, okay, my connection is established. So I'm going to have the database connected, and let's have some information. So here I will have the connect dot connection dot host name. So we are going to log the host name, and we will also log the connection name. So I'm going to have the connect dot connection dot name. So that should be host instead of the host name. So I'm going to have the host here, and in case if it's an error, then we will just console log the error and then we will exit the program. So I'm going to have the error here, and I will use the process.exit to exit my program. So I will have the process.exit, and I'm going to have it here as 1. Now let's export this. So I'm going to have the export default. We are going to have the connection db. So we have this. Now let's go and let's use it in our server.js. So I'm going to go to my server.js, and inside the server.js, what I will do is let's import it here. So I'm going to have the import connect db, and here in the end what I will do is I'm going to call this connect db. All right, and I will save. And now here you will see that if we go and see, our server started at 5001 and our database is also connected, and this is our database host and this is the name. Now we will also use the cores so that we can later on connect our front-end application and access the APIs. So what I will do is I'm going to go here and let's add some configs. So I will have the middleware app.use. All right, I will use the express.json so that we can have the JSON responses. Then I will also use another middleware, which is the inbuilt middleware, and I'm going to use the express.url encoded. All right, and to this we are going to use the extend and we're going to use true. All right, then what we will do is we are also going to use the course. So I'm going to have the app.use, and in this we are going to have the course, and here we are going to use the origin. So which domains we need to allow to access our APIs. So it is the cross origin. So I'm going to use for now http://localhost, and I assume that my front-end application will run on 3000. Then I will also have the credentials true. So we have added these configurations files, and we also have this app.get. So now let's remove this. We are not going to use this anymore. And here we need to add our routes. So I'm going to use one more middleware app.use. And here what I will do is I'm going to have the /API/, and for this we need to have our routes. So I'm going to create a separate file for the routes. So let's have the short URL. So I have this. I'm going to have errors, so that's fine. What we will do is we are now going to create the routes file. So let's go here and I'm going to create a new folder which I will name it as routes. So I'm going to create a new file and let's name the new file as shorturl.ts. all right, so we have this, and now what we will do is let's create the routes. So I'm going to have the import express from express, and then what I will do is I'm going to have a constant. Let's create a router from the express. So express dot router. Now we can add all our routes on this router. So first will be to create a short URL. When we get any of the long form of the URL, we need to create a short form of it, and we need to have it entry in our MongoDB database. So I will have an endpoint for router.post, and this will have the endpoint as short URL, and then we are going to have the request and the response. So we are going to create another file which will be the controller, which is actually going to contain the logic of our endpoints. So I'm going to have the create URL. Now let's create the other endpoints as well. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to copy 4 times. The other endpoint will be the get. So this is going to give us all the data that is available in our database. So all the URLs, full and the short URLs. So I'm going to go here and I will have the get all URL. The next one will be a get. So whenever you click on any of the short URL link, you need to open the full URL. So I'm going to have here ID, and this is going to have a get URL. And the last one is you can also delete it. So I'm going to have a short URL / ID, and here you will have a function which will be the delete URL. So we have all the 4. Now we just need to export the router so that we can use it in our server.js. So I'm going to have the export default. Let's have the router name. We're still going to get an error. We are going to fix it soon because we need to create these functions. So let's go to our server.ts file. I'm going to remove this and I'm going to use the short URL, and now let's import it. So I'm going to go here. I will have the import short URL from our routes. So I will have the /routes/short URL. So now we have this. Now we still get some errors, and these errors are related to the functions that we need to create. So these are the functions and we need to create them. So now we have the routes. Now let's create the controller where we are going to put all the logic of our APIs. So I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to have the controller, and inside the controllers folder, let's create our first controller, which is the short url.ts. So I'm going to give the same name. So I have the short url.ts. So before doing that, we will also like to create the model for our Mongoose, so that when we have the logic, we can directly connect to the Mongoose and get the data and have the operations. So what I will do is I'm going to go here and let's create one more folder, which will be the model. All right, and now let's create a file here. So for that, I will also give the same name, which will be the short url.ts. Now let's create the model. So first I will have the import mongoose, and then we will also import the nano id. So this nano id is a package, so let's go and let's see what it is. So I'm going to go here and I will have the nano id npm, and this nano id is actually the id that we will create the short url. So you can just read about the documentation. Let's go back, and here what I will do is I'm going to have the import. I will use the nano id, and this will be coming from the nano id. Now the next what I will do is I'm going to create a constant which will be the short url schema. So we need to create the schema for our MongoDB database so that it will know what kind of data it is going to get. So what I will do is I'm going to have the new mongoose dot schema. All right, and this schema will be of type JSON. So here what we will do is we are going to have first the full URL, and this full URL will be of type string. So let's have the string, and we are going to have a required field because we need to keep the required field as mandatory. So I'm going to have the required, and I will have the value as true. The next will be our short URL that we are going to generate. So this will be a short URL. We are going to have the type as string, and we are going to have the required as true, and we need to generate the short URL. So for that what we will do is we are going to have a default, and let's have an arrow function, and in this arrow function we are going to generate the nano id. So I'm going to have the nano id function dot, I will have a substring, and the string will be from 0 to 10. So anything the nano id will be generated will be between a 0 to 10 string. Next, we will also need to track the clicks on our short URL. So I will have the clicks, and this will be a type of number. So let's have the number, and then we are going to have the default as 0. And the last, we will also get the timestamps, so that based on the timestamps we can actually sort the data. So we are going to send the data as in a descending order, so whatever the latest is will always come at the top. All right, so I'm going to add timestamp here. All right, and I'm going to have the timestamp as true. All right, so now we have created this, and here we missed the colon, so let me have the colon, and we have everything working fine here. Now we have created the schema. Now let's use this schema and let's export. So I'm going to have the export constant, and we're going to have the URL model, and let's use the mongoose model. So I'm going to have the mongoose model, and we need to pass the short URL as the name, and the value for this will be our short URL schema which we have created. So this is how we created our model for our short URL. We are going to have a full URL type string, short URL type string. We're going to track the clicks, which will be a type number, and default will be 0, and we added a timestamp so that we can sort the data. Now let's go to the controller file, and in the controller what we will do is we are first start going to import the express. So let's have the import express, which will be coming from the express. Then we are also going to import the URL model. So I will have the import URL model. Oops, I missed the semicolon. I will add the semicolon here as well. Now we are going to create different functions. So the first function will be the create URL. So I'm going to copy this, and let's go here, and I'm going to have here export constant. So we're going to have the name export, which is the create URL. All right, and this is going to be an async function. And for parameters, we are going to have a request, which will be of type express dot request, and then we are going to have the response, which will also have a type of express dot response. All right, so we have this request response, and then we have the function. Similarly, let's create the other functions as well. So I'm going to do copy and paste, and the second function will be the get all URL. So I'm going to copy, let's go here, and third function is get URL. So I'm going to copy, and let's add get URL, and the last one will be delete URL. So I'm going to copy, and let's go here, and let's add the delete URL. All right, so we have all the 4 functions. Now let's go and import them here. So I'm going to go here, and I will have the create URL. Alright, then I will have the get all URL, then I'm going to have the get URL, and the last one will be the delete URL. So we have imported all the 4 functions, and now you see that we are not getting any errors. So our application is also now running successfully. Let's go to the controller, and now let's add the logic there. So I'm going to close all those files which we don't want, and I will go to the short URL. Yep. I'm going to minimize the terminal as well. So for this create URL, what we will do is first let's have a try and catch block. And in the try, first we will see that whatever the URL user is sending, we already have an entry in our database or not. All right, so we are not going to have a duplicate entries. So what I will do is I'm going to have a constant URL found, and this will be equals to an await, and I'm going to have the URL model. And on this model we have a find function, so we are going to use the find function, and we will be finding with the full URL. And this full URL we will get it from the request body. So we can also do a console log. So I'm going to have a console log, and here I will have the full URL is, and this will be coming from the request body dot full URL. All right, so we have this, and here we can also use the same. So I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to add it here. All right, now if we are able to find the URL, then in that case we are going to throw an error to the user. So we will have the URL found dot length. If it's greater than 0, in that case let's have a response status, and we are going to give a status of 409, which is the conflict. That means we already have a URL in our database with the URL which we have just received in our request. So this is a conflict, and then we are going to have the response dot send, and we are going to send the URL found itself, so whichever the URL we have found. Now if we haven't found any URL, that means we are going to create a new entry into our database. So let's have the else clause here, and I'm going to have the short URL. I will have the await URL model dot create. So we are going to use the create function, and on this create function we are going to pass the same thing. So what I will do is I will just do a destructure. So I'm going to have a constant full URL, and this will be equals to the request dot body. All right, and then we will just pass the full URL. So I'm going to remove this, I will save it, and we can also use the full URL here. All right, so we have this, and once we get the record created into our database, we can just send the response back. So I will have the response dot status as 201, which is a record is created, and then we are going to send the short URL which we have just created. Now this is fine, and if it's an error, then in that case what we will do is we are going to have the response dot status as 500, the server error, and then we are going to send a message. So I will have the message, and here I'm going to have the something went wrong. So this is how we are going to have our create URL, and this is going to create the short URL. We can also give a try, but before that let's have this get all URL as well, so that when we create it we can also use this API get all URL and try to fetch the data back. So for this one what I will do is I'm going to go here, and let's have the try catch block, and in the try catch block let's have a constant. We're going to have the short URLs which will be equals to the await, and we are going to use the URL model dot find, and then what we will do is we will have if short URL dot length is less than 0. So in that case what we will do is we will have the res dot status. So let's set the status as 404, nothing, we have found it, and then we are going to send the response. So let's have a message here, and I'm going to use a message, and we are going to have that short URLs not found. But if we find the URLs, then in that case we are going to just send the response. So I'm going to have the res dot status is 200, then I'm going to send, and we are going to send all the short URLs. And if it's an error, then we are going to use the same thing. So we are not going to do anything on the error handling part, so we are going to just have the same thing. Now let's give a try. So we have our app successfully running on port 5001. We also connected to the database. Let's give a try. So what I will do is first let's have a post URL, and to the post URL we are going to have the APIs short URL, and we are going to have the post. Now we will also need to give the body, so let's go and let's add the body. So I'm going to go to the body, and on the body we need to have a full URL. All right, and we need to give some URL here. So let's go and get some URL. So I'm going to go to the browser. All right, and in the browser, if I just use this URL, or maybe I will just use this one. So I'm going to use this one, copy, and I'm going to add it here. All right, and then let's send the request. So I'm going to click on send request, and you see that we get full URL, which is this one. We have the ID, we also have the short ID, created at and updated at, and this also created a record into our database. So we can go and check here. So if I refresh, and if we go to the browse collections, then we should be able to see the test, and we have the short URL, and this is our record created into our database. All right, now let's go and let's try to fetch it. So what I will do is I'm going to go here, and I will have the get, and then this is going to give me all the URLs that are available. So I'm going to give a send, and you see we have an array, and this is array of objects where we will have all the URLs. Now this data, we can use it on the front end, and then we can display it on the front end side, which we are going to do it later on. So for now, we will just focus on the backend APIs. All right, so we have successfully created two endpoints. One is the create, and other one is get all URLs. Next, what we will do is we are going to work on the get URL and then delete URL. So let's go and let's work on the get URL. So I'm going to go here, and on this get URL, so let's create a constant which will be a short URL, and this is going to equals to await. I'm going to use the model dot find one, which is going to give us the result, and inside this what I will do is we are going to use the short URL. So we are going to take the short URL as an ID in the request param. So I'm going to have the request param dot ID. Now the next what we will do is that if we don't have this short URL, then in that case we are going to have a response status of 404, and we are going to have send, and let's have the message. So I'm going to have the message, and we're going to have that full URL not found. And if we find the short URL, then in that case what we will do is we are first need to update our clicks. Whenever a user click on the short URL on the front end, it is going to make an API call to this get URL. So that means the user has clicked on it, so we need to update the clicks. So let's have the short URL clicks. I'm going to have plus plus, and then I'm going to have the short URL dot save. So it is going to save my clicks, and then what we will do is we are going to have the rest dot redirect, and we need to redirect it to the full URL. So I'm going to have the dollar, I will have this short URL dot full URL. And if it's an error, then what we will do is we need to put this into a try catch block. So let's have the try catch block. All right, I'm going to cut this and put it in the try, and then if it's an error, we are going to just copy and put it the same. So I'm going to go here and add it here. And the last one is the delete one. So the delete one will also be much similar how we get the URL. So we are going to have the ID, and then based on the ID we need to delete it. So what I will do is I'm just going to copy this. So I'm going to copy this try catch block, and I'm going to put it here, and here instead of this I'm going to have the find by ID and delete, but this time this will be an ID. So I'm going to have the underscore ID, as this underscore ID is what we have it in our database. So this is the ID, and we need to delete a record based on this ID. All right, so we are going to get this ID from the front end, and then we will just take that ID request.params.id, then we are going to delete it, and then if we get the short URL, we are going to send the response as 204 no content, and here we will just change the message. So I'm going to have requested URL successfully deleted. So we have this, and then we will not have any else statement. So I'm going to just remove this, and we have this one. So now we see that the application is also running, and all our endpoints are now working fine. So let's give a try one by one. So I have this. Now if we want to delete it, I will just need to pass the ID. So I'm going to copy this ID, and I'm going to put it here. But before that, let's use the get URL. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go here. I will add it this one, and we have the get request. So I'm going to send it. and we see that we get this HTML page, and this HTML page is actually from the npm website. So this is the website and we get this HTML page in the response. Now we get this HTML page in the response, but we also update the click. So if we go and check, so I'm going to remove this and I'm going to click on send, then we see that we have click as 1. That means someone has clicked on this short URL. Now if we want to delete it, I'm going to copy this. Alright, then I'm going to go here and I'm going to change this to delete, and I'm going to click on send. So we get 204, and if we go here and we see that we should be able to get the response for delete, which is the requested URL successfully deleted. But we are not going to get this because we are putting it as 204 here. So what I will do is I'm going to change this to 200, and then I'm going to give a try. So what I will do is first let's create again. So I'm going to create the request. Let's create the record. I'm going to send, and we see that we have created a new record 201. Now let's try and delete it. So I'm going to copy. I'm going to go here and add the ID. I'm going to go here, delete, and I'm going to send, and you see that we have requested URL successfully deleted. So it's purely on your choice. You put it 204, then you will not be able to send any data because 204 is no content. And if you make it 200 successful request, you can send a successful request message. Alright, so we have now tested all our endpoints and all our endpoints are now working. I think we will just take a pause here, and then probably we will go back in our next video and we will just build the client application as well, and then we will see how we can connect our backend to the front-end server. So that's all I have in this video. I hope you liked the video. A thumbs up is appreciated. You can also connect with me via Facebook or Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter for latest updates, and before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you don't miss the videos like this one. Thank you. Thanks for watching.